one out of three kids that have gone into this career have actually dropped out in year one.
Hello, I am Evan Robb, author of The 10-Minute Principle, and you are listening to The Ed Show.
Welcome to that show, a podcast where I sit with some amazing personalities from across sectors and borders to have meaningful conversation on topics that matters to us. Welcome back. My guest for the day is someone who believes that career planning is not just a one-man show, wherein one can simply join a program at a younger age and in future he or she will achieve success. It is rather a process which involves deep understanding of the socio-economic background of the individual, their interests and expectations, and when he saw that this is a huge gap, he thought of supporting the people by making this journey a cakewalk by establishing his company Univariety. He is Jaideep Gupta. Hi Jaideep, welcome on the show.
Hi, thanks a lot, Himanshu.
Jaideep, today I have thought about discussing something with you which is very crucial because there is a lot of hue and cry about career counseling. And what I've seen about career counseling is that this is one of the fastest growing industries in India and in many other developing countries. And as per the latest statistics, its market capital is around 5,000 crore in India, if I'm not wrong. And we still have a huge shortage of career counselors, which is nearly about 1.4 million career counselors. With these statistics, how do you see the future of career counseling in India and in other developing countries? And where do you see the industry going in the near future?
Right. No, I think that's a very pertinent point, Himanshu. If you look at the history of sort of career counseling and guidance in the country, it's been one which is highly fragmented. It's been highly human dependent. It's been highly personality driven. Um, Typically, a student or a parent will go and talk to an individual and essentially be limited to the view that that individual has. Now, unlike many other professions, which actually have certifications, which actually have credentials, if you look at career guidance, something as important as that, it doesn't really have a certification based approach. So, how do you know you're talking to somebody who actually has that kind of depth, that kind of knowledge? So I think one of the ways in which the industry is now going to shape up, especially with companies like ours, it is about making career counseling and guidance a lot more data driven, a lot more system driven, and less just opinion driven. So if you can actually look at paths that people have taken in the past, what has worked, what has not worked, right, from subjects that you should have in schools to the kind of courses in colleges, and look at success percentages, look at data around what worked for the past several batches of students, and that's really going to help people make decisions. So I believe that career guidance, the way it's growing is because companies now are starting to look at technology in it, and it's not just opinion based. While the role of a counselor is crucial because technology can take you, let's say, 80% there, but then those basic insecurities, questions, psychological questions that people will have, that can be answered only by a person who's qualified. So it has to be a combination of technology and individual, and that's really what's going to help get those kind of numbers.
How do you see that we should be addressing this elephant in the room, which is unethical practices? As many career counselors are not equipped to offer career counseling services, rather, they act as the admission agent of various universities and recommend career moves based on their university collaborations.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a fairly common practice, unfortunately. One sort of comparison, Himanshu, that I would want to draw is to different professions. I mean, if you look at something as old as let's say medicine, look at doctors. I mean, we do have cases that keep coming out where doctors prescribe certain medication because the pharmaceutical industry is sponsoring their events and things like that. So while and that's for something as crucial, it's for the health of the individual. So while these are unethical practices, they are sort of common across industries. In career guidance as well, you do have counselors who act as agents for universities and things like that. I think it's the you know I'm reminded of the term I read in economics many years ago, which was caveat emptor, which says let the buyer beware. A person who's seeking guidance should also do their due diligence and understand the background of the counselor or the organization that they're taking support from. Um, Having said that, there are certain certifications now that are available. So if you want to see the qualification of the counselor in the last 3 to 4 years' time, there are ways to see people who are independent, people who are qualified. Um,
Now, this leaves me with a few questions, and
yeah,
I would first like to understand how do you feel
yeah,
that our education institutions or parents should assess the career counselors before putting the future of people at stake?
yeah. So I think number one, Himanshu, would be to look at have they been professionally qualified for it. So for example, I could be a math teacher in a good school for many years, but I may still not be qualified to guide on all the careers that are available in math today, right? Unless I'm qualified to guide on career selection, my knowledge of a subject is not enough to talk about the future prospect. So one is to look at qualifications, just like when we go to certain professionals, we look at if they're qualified or not. Today you have LinkedIn, you have various ways of looking at a person's background. One, and second is more than qualification is the actual experience. Have they been doing the counseling for careers in the past? Are there testimonials of students and parents online available where they can see that these students have been guided? They should ask for references of past students that have got help from this counselor. We get that all the time. I mean, we have more than 120 people in our organization, and a lot of times, new parents who come to us, new schools that come to us, ask for references. And I think it's just being smart. They must know what kind of an organization they're dealing
Well,
with.
you are talking about the opportunities that are present today,
Yeah.
but in a different way when we say that 5 years down the line that the opportunities that we have today will go obsolete. In this case, don't you feel that career counselors should be equipped to understand future
Yes,
demands?
absolutely. So, I mean, so career counselors, like most other professions, should be upgrading their own knowledge, should be attending events, conferences, interacting with universities, doing things like that. Now, that's hard to judge if they are really upgrading their knowledge, but one on a regular basis. But one way of checking it is to see if they've really been professionally training and going through certifications and things like that, which is available for people to see. So I think that's one way. Second is, look, career counselors are not um, predictors of the future. They are studying it like many individuals. It is at the end of the day, if they can use technology, if they can use systems, if they can take the help of various tools, it makes them a lot more professional than just giving an opinion. So I think those are the two things I would say. I mean, look at counselors who keep upgrading their skills with professional certifications. And second is to look at counselors who actually are using technology to provide guidance and not just sit and give an opinion.
Don't you feel that career counseling should be regularized the way it is regularized in the Western world, and that
Totally.
our counselors should get counseling license on annually renewable basis based on a set of criteria such as their understanding on the future skills and
Yeah.
future demands?
So, I mean, that's definitely part of like a wish list. It's like a dream topic for somebody like us who's in the guidance space. To that point, Himanshu, I'd like to say when we set up our practice many years ago, we were looking to recruit a whole team of counselors, and we found that it's just impossible to get counselors who come with that experience or any real practical experience. One of the reasons why we started our certification global career counselor is because we couldn't find counselors who are available, who are already trained. So I think having a regulation is something that is definitely desirable. Whether it will happen or not, I'm not sure. But if I think back to like my own schooling, I went to a school in the US, my elementary, middle school, and a part of high school. And we had counselors just as we had math teacher or English teacher. It was part of a school. The school government school had a system to provide guidance. This is pre-internet days. I'm talking about early 90s, late 80s, those years, right? So one is to rely on the government to look at it. Second is if you look at schools themselves, the private schools, they should be encouraging counseling discussions, setting them up for the students, and incorporating that in their schools.
So what you are trying to say is that this is actually a school's responsibility to have well qualified career counselor on their panel or on their payroll instead of a third party venturing into this space.
No, I think look, it's very desirable to have the government make it as a mandate, right? It'll be fantastic if that happens. In fact, if you look at CBSC as a curriculum, as a board, I think maybe 7, 8 years ago, maybe more, almost 10 years ago, did come out with a regulation that every single private school in the country must have a counselor on their rolls, right? So technically, it's there as a regulation, but the implementation of it is not been monitored. So what happens is in most schools, anybody who has a psychology degree gets shown as the mandatory qualification requirement, right?
That's exactly what I was about to say. That with CBSE or other national boards, the definition of a counselor is very lame.
Yes, it's a psychological counselor, which is also important. I mean, but it doesn't replace a career counselor.
Exactly.
So I think the school, in our country, the schools, private schools have taken a lot of initiative. I mean, we have one of the largest numbers of international curriculum schools, IB schools, more IB schools in India than we have in China. A lot of initiatives have been taken by entrepreneurs and education entrepreneurs in India so far. I think it is kind of their prerogative to now put in a guidance and career system. What's the point of advertising 90% plus marks when 40-50% of the school gets 90% marks? What happens to these 90% plus marks students? Where do they go? What kind of careers do they have? How do they lead their life after graduating from school? Nobody's talking about that. And schools should, they must position themselves on those kind of planks.
Don't you feel that one of the better alternatives is to have a stronger alumni base
Yes.
and to involve alumni in the education system can give better idea to our students about future prospects?
So in fact, about 3 years ago, Himanshu, we actually redefined the way counseling should be delivered. Right? We questioned the way counseling should be explained and delivered. Why should a counseling be limited to just a counselor speaking to a student? A counselor's view is one view. It's an important view, but it's one view. So we created a technology platform where the students in school get matched to their seniors based on the choices being made. So if I'm in class 11th and I'm choosing design or I'm interested in design, the system will match me to my seniors from 3, 4, 5 years ago who are currently doing design and show me their path, show me their subjects, show me their struggles, make me have conversations with them, watch their videos, invite them for sessions. So we said, look, let's democratize the entire process of counseling, not have it limited to just one individual. It also takes care of some of the points you raised earlier about unethical practices. If I'm an alumnus of a school and if I'm guiding my junior, I'm not telling one particular university. I don't have any vested interest in that. So, I mean,
True.
I'm pretty happy to say we have thousands of conversations happening on a weekly basis now between students and their alumni just through the system. The counseling is happening day in and day out without the school actually even putting in physical effort in it. That's the power of technology and guidance.
I was actually discussing a similar kind of arrangement with another guest in one of my previous episodes, and we were discussing that why don't we as education institutions open our doors for different industries or professions, and why don't we expose our student to various professional atmospheres?
Right. I mean, that's happening now, but I would say in limited parts.
It is not just
Yes.
limited, but the other challenge is that being an educator, even I am not exposed to different professions, as I may be aware of certain industries, but I may not be aware of the industries which are evolving now.
Right. So I'll tell you, I mean, we've seen, so since we work with like 350 plus schools across the country, we've seen some very innovative ways in which schools have done this. So one of the groups of international schools in Hyderabad, Vizag, Bangalore, what they did was they looked at their parent base from all their students, which kind of companies are the parents working in, what professions, and they invited the parents to come in and take sessions about their specific jobs and industries. So a parent would come in, he's very interested, he or she is very interested, and they will come in and talk about what is it like to be a policeman or an IAS or a doctor or a CA. And this whole series became so successful for that group of schools that they did almost 600 sessions in a year.
Do you feel that this kind of arrangement will actually prepare our student for the future? Because the parent majorly talk about the present, as even
So
they may not
not
be aware of the future
necessarily, yeah.
opportunities. See, the future is unseen.
Yeah,
Nobody knew that COVID 19 will hit us and our
right, right,
economies. And when we are talking about school students,
right.
and by the time they'll complete their college or university, many things will change.
Absolutely. So I think, I mean, when I said parents, I think the emphasis is not on the emphasis is not on the word parent, but on the actual practicing professional. So if you see, if I'm a pilot and my kid goes to, let's say, DPS RK Puram, and if I'm doing a session over there, now I will be able to go and talk about, let's say, the new technologies that are coming in, pilots are being trained in, and things like that. I'll be able to talk about the practical aspects of being a pilot today and what kind of changes do I see in the future. So it gives a lot of exposure to students to do that across a variety of careers. What I'm trying to say, Himanshu, is that that's one of the ways in which schools are being able to give exposure. Definitely, things like internships in summers and options like that add to the overall perspective.
And one of the other challenges that I have come across in the counseling space is that approximately 90% of our counselors in India and in the majority of the developing countries are not
Okay.
able to understand and act
Yeah.
on the multicultural counseling aspect.
Do you mean counsel students outside of India, or do you mean
Multicultural counseling is something when we keep the race, ethnicity, belief system, cultural influences in mind.
right? I think, I mean, that's a valid point. It boils down to two things. If you see a lot of the counselors in the past, um, they weren't, they didn't plan to become counselors. It's quite a paradox, actually. You know, counselors in the past landed up in the profession of career counseling by chance. They didn't plan their own path as such in the past, right? So they weren't really passionate about it. They weren't really sort of researching it and getting into all the details of it. I think if I look at now in the last 4 or 5 years, the kind of counselors that we see, that we come across, these are counselors who are upgrading their skills. They are looking at advising on different backgrounds, advising students from different financial, different cultural, different language backgrounds also, and being able to provide options to them. So I think that scene is changing now, where a counselor was only limited to, let's say, international schools and sort of higher end parents and students. Now you have counseling solutions for students who don't even want to complete class 12th. How do I get into a vocational career just after class 10th or 11th? There are counselors who will take care of different sections of society and different needs.
I was not just talking about the delivery aspect of counseling. I was also talking about understanding the background of the child who is coming for career counseling, because there
Right.
are a lot of belief system, cultural or societal influences that plays a very critical role in nurturing a child's career.
So I'll tell you how we have solved for this, and this is a constant, endeavor from our side. One of the things that we do is our counselors don't have a discussion with a student until we have got them to give us a bunch of their details. So they submit. a bunch of their details about the student. About the parent comes onto the system. The parent puts in a lot of details about, let's say, their own education background, their own aspirations and stuff. Now, if a counselor has time, and in a structured way can understand the family before they ever have a first conversation with them, then they're able to provide specific inputs. Most of the time, what happens is a student is going to a counselor and they just start sort of talking. They're not, the counselor is not even aware of the background of the student and family. So if again, if we can use technology and have students and parents fill in stuff beforehand, then counselors are much more equipped to consider their personalities and their family backgrounds.
When we are talking about technology, then the majority of the parents are not equipped to understand technology.
Hmm.
And I'm not just talking about technology in the basic usability aspect, but the nitty gritty is involved in the technological aspect of it. And I have also seen that in the last few years there are many different varieties of technology companies which have started mushrooming, which are talking about career counselings, but not in the career counseling way. So
Right.
what they say is that we will do your analysis based on their
Right.
methodology,
Right. Right.
and it may be
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
DMIT
Yeah.
by
Absolutely.
taking fingerprints. And this is just one example. There are plenty of examples that I have.
Right. Right. Absolutely. That DMIT, the one that you mentioned about fingerprints and stuff. Yeah. So I mean, that's there are. I mean, the psychology world is split on that. Most people don't understand how that can actually work. I don't believe it. Um, I think while again it's important for one to be able to distinguish between what kind of systems will work, what kind of organizations do you want advice from. Himanshu, I when I talk to our counseling teams, many times I equate the career counseling profession to medical industry. You can't just sort of provide an advice to a to a patient without having looked at some details of them. Otherwise, there's a high chance that you could go wrong. There must be some report, there must be some assessment that you do, and based on that, you form your professional opinion and you start talking to them. In the counseling space, the use of technology can be pretty well done if it is designed in a way to use the right kind of assessments, the right kind of interventions. It boils down to the person checking, looking at the background of the kind of organization that they're dealing with before they actually submit everything. If it's a fingerprint type stuff, I mean, it should definitely raise alarm bells.
And even if you talk about the different analysis system that we have in place, like psychometric
Yeah,
psychoanalysis,
yeah,
and people are using different kind of analysis system to evaluate a child's
right,
background and his or her way of understanding about different areas.
right,
Do you feel that by evaluating someone on the basis of assessment, we should be able to give guidance, because this
yeah,
is actually a responsibility
absolutely.
and not just a business, and hence we should keep other factors in mind, as the entire career of the child depends upon this.
Right. And I mean, a lot of money and time investment that parents make is going to be based on the kind of advice that they get. So I think coming to your question specifically on the psychometric assessments and different things like that, there are so many types of assessments. There are many types of philosophies on which assessments are built. The way we look at counseling is assessment is one input into making decisions, right? So, out of let's say five or six different ways of arriving at decisions, one input is a kind of assessment. It gives you some data points to think about. But what we rely heavily on is exploration, which involves discussions with different stakeholders, different types of people. So, for example, in our system, the way we define counseling is interactions with counselors, and these are multiple counselors, interaction with multiple seniors, multiple alumni, so that you get to understand what the reality is at the college level, at the career level, and interaction with multiple universities. Now, because of COVID, what's happened is people have become a lot more open to digital interventions. And now we have every week dozens of sessions happening where university faculty, admissions officers are having open group sessions to talk about nuances of admissions and nuances of certain careers, right? We have open alumni forums where every week there are several of them happening with a person a couple of years senior to you is talking about their experience. So many such things now are helping in students making the decision. The psychometric is one part of it.
And there are a lot of theories about the right age for offering career guidance to a child. What do you have to say about this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's sort of like a funnel, the way we look at it. If you see, starting from grade 6 or 7, it's a lot about the top of the funnel, which is very wide, which is about giving exposure. You don't know what the child is going to like, not like, etc. But how will the child and you as a parent decide that? Right? It's only possible if they are exposed to a variety of things. You could have virtual internships, you could have physical interactions, a lot of different ways in doing it now. It's about providing exposure. Grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. Grade 9 onwards, you start going a little deeper into certain areas. You start understanding certain subjects that the child is good at, certain subjects that they're not good at. 9 and 10 is a lot more about subjects and figuring out what kind of subjects does one want to excel in. And then 11 and 12 is about, therefore, choosing the courses and the colleges and the application process that one should go to. So 6, 7, 8, a lot about exposure, 9 and 10 about subjects, and 11, 12 about courses and colleges and applications.
Don't you feel that we should touch base a child at a younger age, because the kind of traits that we can see in a child who is maybe studying in primary classes will be entirely different from a child who is in the middle school?
Right.
And we need to understand that kids in younger age are far more creative, and the traits that we can see in them, we may not be able to see it when they are in the middle school. Don't you feel that we should first analyze different traits when they are younger and gradually nurture
Right.
them when they are moving towards a middle school or senior school?
So I think anything less than grade 5 or 6 is too early to start doing analysis. It's the time when the kid is naturally developing. They are experiencing things. Exposure obviously is given right from the first day the student goes to school, even in nursery or pre-primary or different things that schools call it. So exposure is being given, but I don't think one can draw any meaningful analysis before they hit grade 5 or grade 6. So, you know, the advice to parents would be just look at a variety of exposures that they get, be it sports, be it people, be it cultural activities, etc., right from grade 1 up to grade 7 or grade 8. And then starts the analysis of what is the child good at and not good at.
The way our industries are evolving and disrupting, career counseling is not progressing at the same pace.
Right.
Don't you feel that we still have a long way to go in career counseling?
I think career counseling is directly linked back to the world of higher education and the world of careers itself. So, I mean, we've been in it now for the last 7, 8 years, and I can tell you that the way it's changing now, it has never been in the past. So, it's moving at a much faster pace than before, largely because the kind of options that are available to students, if you look at the need for a parent to go and ask questions, it is directly related to the kind of confusions that they have. If they don't find that anything has changed in the world, they don't find a need to go and ask a counselor anything. I mean, a corollary would be, let's say, if somebody gets fever because of throat infection, and they know that this is the kind of antibiotic that's taken, this is the kind of paracetamol that's taken, and they've been doing that for years. If it's the same thing that happens again, they will probably take the same thing again, unless and until something new happens. They will not typically go to a doctor. That's the psyche of most people. So I'm saying today, if you see, when courses like liberal arts have come up, liberal arts did not exist in India maybe 7, 8 years ago also. Most parents today don't understand what is liberal arts, but they're hearing about it, right? Who will they go to and ask those questions? A little bit of Google, and then they will look for a counselor. If 20 years ago or 15 years ago those options didn't exist, parents who didn't have a need to go and ask. So I think it's linked back to the pace of evolution around the higher education space. Good new universities coming up, variety of options that they're bringing, international collaborations that they're bringing. Now parents have a need to go and ask questions about them to counselors.
Coming back to parents, one of the biggest challenges that I see in parent is that,
Yeah,
when we are talking about the parent from affluent background who are well traveled and well exposed to different industries, they may kind of ask the right question from the career counselors. But what about the majority of the parent who are from the lower strata of the society and they may not be exposed to different types of industries and opportunities that exist today?
right. No, so I think we get to work with schools that are fairly premium, the highest end of the spectrum, and also schools that are average, that are very much mid level. The interesting thing there, Himanshu, is that we see almost no difference in parents' awareness levels linked to economic strata. So you could have parents who are, paying 6 lakh rupees per year fees for their child, 4 lakh rupees per year. When they pay a higher amount, a lot of them just believe that now it's the school's responsibility to decide everything. They don't get involved. They may not educate themselves for it. A student of a regular school, a DPS or whatever other regular CBSE school, we see little difference between the parents of the two categories. I think the big difference is between parents who are themselves educated versus first-time learners. If the child is from a family where there's nobody who's educated, there I agree it has to be very different because parents need to be handheld a lot more because they have almost no idea about it. But otherwise, parents of all other kinds of schools essentially behave quite similar. They do need to be educated. They do need to be given exposure to. When we partner with a school, for example, we hold almost equal number of sessions for parents as we do for students.
This is something in Indian context, right?
Right,
Now, since you are working in many other countries or even career counseling exists worldwide, and these challenges are not just in India, these challenges are in every single developing nation.
right.
With this, how do you see career counseling taking shape in other developing countries,
Right.
and can you relate the parent psychology in India and in the other developing countries?
Absolutely. See, I mean, if you look at parents in school, parents of kids in school in Dubai, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, like so many other countries where we have worked with these schools and parents, um, there is not too much difference. A parent is a parent. A parent is interested in the best outcome for the child. They are willing to spend money. They are lazy. Usually, they don't educate themselves for it. They are act last minute. When the kid is in grade 12, they'll start, moving and taking action. Class 9 and 10 is about prevention of any flaws. They don't become so active in that. I'm talking in general. The specific ones obviously are different. So I think anybody in the counseling space who's been doing work for a while realizes that just talking to students doesn't end up reaching the end outcome because if the parent is unaware of what the options are, they don't let the outcomes happen. They will stop it at the last minute if they are not kept in the loop. So it's in everybody's interest to make sure that the parent is involved in the process, especially when you're talking to the school level.
One thing I've realized in last few years is that there is too much emphasis on future learning, or the emphasis is on paving the path for our
Hmm.
kids in a way that the choice of course they will do or the choice of university they'll go to,
Yeah,
wherein in the Western world we don't just see the learning path but we also see career path of or
absolutely.
working opportunities straight after schooling.
That's right.
Do you see it happening in the developing countries as well, wherein our people can straight away choose to work instead of going through the higher ed process, as higher education may not be relevant for each individual, and even corporate
Yeah.
like Google have started saying that higher education is
Yeah.
not mandatory if you want to work in Google.
No, I mean, in fact, Himanshu, this is a topic very close to my heart. I've done a lot of research on this, and I plan to go quite deep in this in the years to come. Where why should every kid go through college? For some kids, it doesn't make sense. If I'm someone very good with my hands and I like woodworking and I'm good at it, then why should I go and study English literature and do a BA or a BCom and stuff like
And
that?
eventually getting
Uh,
with the same handheld work.
Yeah, maybe I get back to my arts and crafts, or maybe, and worse is maybe I end up joining a bank and just doing some regular job, because that's I just went with the flow, and I realized only when I'm 40 that, oh, I should have not done this and I should have done something else. So it's I think in Asia in general, parents are very obsessed with status symbols attached to college names. So it's a lot more for parents than for students where my kid has gone, what's the kind of reputation or kind of brand that the college has. India, China, Singapore, etc. These countries have that. I actually have the vantage point of looking at it both from a US schooling system that I attended and the Indian schooling system. And I can tell you that in the US, for example, it's a very valid question to ask whether a kid is going to go to college or not. From a good school in class 11th and 12th, it's an actual discussion. In India, imagine a regular good school. If the school is asking or the parent is asking whether the kid has to go to college, so whether is not an option. Obviously, you're going to go to college. It's kind of forced upon kids. I do see it changing in the future now. It will take a few years, but work opportunities just after class 12th is a huge area. In the next 5 to 7 years' time, we should start seeing this happen. The schools themselves training the kids on skills and placing them in a job after class 12th. There are schools in India, in Delhi, in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, that have started working on this area now. Big schools. So I'm pretty sure in the next few years we will see these happening.
And how do you see career counseling supporting startup entrepreneurs? Startup is such a buzzword these days,
Hmm.
and a kid who doesn't even have these skills to be an entrepreneur jumps straight into establishing
Yeah,
a startup without realizing that the entrepreneurial journey is not
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
everyone.
It's been glorified.
How do you see career counseling enabling our kids to overcome these
Yeah.
challenges?
Um, I mean, anytime I hear somebody say, I want to become an entrepreneur, it's like somebody saying, I want to become rich. Like, what does that mean? It's just a dream, it's just a wish. What's the plan? Who is it relevant for? Entrepreneur is basically someone who's solving a problem. Entrepreneur is not a lifestyle. So it's become glamorized, I guess, because of all these startup stories and fundings and venture capitals and stuff like that. But I think um, at a B school level, if you look at MBA colleges and sort of higher education institutions, I don't think they are really spending time guiding kids. I think colleges are so obsessed with placements and getting their kids into good jobs and and entrepreneurial stints, that they're not really spending time advising a kid what kind of a career they should have, let's say post engineering or post MBA. Um, Schools, in fact, have started to do stuff now, but I don't think colleges are doing as much. They have a training placement officer who's just basically placing them. So I think career guidance companies can partner with colleges and help the students understand: Are you right for entrepreneurial work? What does being an entrepreneur actually mean? At what stage in your life should you do a startup? Is 22 the right age for a startup, or maybe you get 10 years experience and then you think about something like that? So I think guidance companies should look at partnering with colleges also. It's not our space. We don't work with colleges. We work exclusively with schools. But I know of some companies that do work with colleges.
And it is not just about entrepreneurship, as you have
Yeah,
rightly pointed out that how these training and placement executives in colleges only emphasize on placing these students in the corporate without even understanding
yeah,
whether the candidate will be the right fit for that corporate or not.
right.
And we see that there is a huge gap and a huge mismatch in the career counseling space in the universities.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, um, I was doing a session for both the batches of one of the IIMs. So about 480 kids were attending. And these are IIM graduates, I mean, IIM students, not graduates yet, top of the line, MBAs. And there is no process in that IIM to actually help a student decide. everyone is trying for the same set of jobs, consulting, investment banking, which pay the highest, FMCG, and now startups. So there should definitely be a view of that. I don't think I've not heard of much work happening in that space right now.
And the only work that I have seen happening in how companies are mushrooming in making these individuals employable.
Yes. So which is actually further sort of perpetuating that myth. You become more in coding, you start coding at a younger age, or you start doing coding as side things along with your college, things like that. So it's further perpetuating that myth about, oh, if you do coding you will become a great entrepreneur, you will become a Bill Gates.
It is actually pure glorification.
Absolutely. And it sort of plays with the minds of these students anywhere from the age of 14 to 22. It does play with their minds and sort of gives a wrong expectation. There must be some rules about it, Himanshu. Now that I'm thinking about it as I'm speaking, um, it's kind of mis-selling. I mean, if you see ads of different coding companies now on TV as well, on YouTube, it's talking about a kid in grade in age, let's say age 9 or age 10, making an app where investors are coming in and fighting with each other to make investments. How many times will that happen? It's such a mis-sell. They're showing the image of a Bill Gates, of a Steve Jobs, and saying they started early, so you should start early.
It is not just about showing Bill Gates or coding companies. If you see all
Yeah,
these edtech startups which are mushrooming, they are trying to glorify their particular domain, and
yeah,
they are not just talking about the skills that our kids really need. As
absolutely.
for example, before coding, a child must understand creativity, reasoning, analytical, problem solving skills, or computational thinking. And without developing these
Yeah.
skills, they are straight away jumping onto coding.
And the thing is, they're feeding. A lot of these companies are feeding basic sense of achievement by publishing, let's say, an app on an app store. Now, whether it's actually useful, not useful, what did the kid learn? All of that is questionable. But the parent feels proud that my kid has published an app and things like that. So, sort of false a sense of accomplishment and achievement. It's really important for parents to look at and see what is the learning outcome by doing any of these programs, any of these products which are being marketed.
Pradeep, again, I'm coming back to the same question that I had asked a few minutes ago.
Hmm.
That don't you feel that how these companies are misleading and mis-selling their products
Yeah,
and trying to glorify their domain? We should rather sit across with these students at a younger age and try to
right.
walk hand in hand with them and stop them when they are going wrong and nurture them towards the right direction from the younger age.
So I think yes, the nurturing at a younger age needs to happen. But any sort of evaluation, any sort of assessment of their strengths and all of that, it can't happen until they have developed a certain perspective, they have gone through certain experiences. So I'll tell you, I mean, from my perspective, Himanshu, I was that kid. I was that 8 year old in my school, in elementary school in US, and then eventually a 12, 13 year old. And I remember our assessments had started, our evaluations assessments had started only after I reached grade six or so, grade six or grade seven. And it made sense because I had a view by then about some things, and they could evaluate and see my strengths and my weaknesses. But before that, it's important to just have a lot of exposure which is given, so a student is not sort of sitting in one silo.
Now, why I've raised this particular question again is
Yeah.
because these glorified corporations are trying to
Yes.
cash kids when they're younger, which means they don't want the kid's brain to evolve.
Hmm.
Rather, they are trying to narrow it down.
Which is really wrong, and that's where parents need to take a call and say, look, I'm not going to go super specific at age 6 or 7 or 8 and just put them down in one silo, but I want to give exposure to 10 different things. I want to give exposure to different careers, different cities, if I have the money to be able to show them around. If that exposure is given by grade 7, 8, 9, they can start becoming a little bit more specific. Um, but if you get too deep too early, then that won't work. I mean, in India right now, in fact, Himanshu, and just to add to that, most parents and students, they are starting thinking about careers only in grade 11 or sometimes in grade 12, right? For us, the big challenge has been, I mean, forget that young age. For us, the big challenge has been to get parents to start thinking about it in grade 8, grade 9. They think, oh, there's so much time still. I still have 4 years. Whereas that's not actually true. You need to start making up your mind around that time. So grade 9 onwards, one needs to start getting pretty specific.
And this actually leaves a question to the parents whether
Yeah,
they should be enrolling their kids in these
yeah,
glorified programs, or they should go with the ease and make their kids understand about
yeah.
different professions, different sports, cultures, and whatnot. Gradually, and they
Yeah.
can gradually allow the kids to
Yeah.
evolve.
No, so I'll give you an example of that. So, there are what's a good program, let's say, is a program that gives an exposure, let's say, for a couple of days, couple of weeks, something like that, and it finishes off, right? So the parent is, let's say, buying a program. It could be a summer program at a university or any such thing. There are hundreds of options available, but it finishes in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks. Now, what's not necessarily a good program is where the company is making the parent sign up for the next 2 years, next 4 years, next 6 years. One of the biggest edtech company now, which is all over the place now, with Shah Rukh Khan helping advertise and all of that, they are even signing up parents for 6 years, 8 years, programs which are that long, right? By giving a good deal, by giving a price bundle. It's attractive because it sounds like a sale, like a deal, but it just makes the parents spend that much money upfront, and now the kid is locked in it for the next 6 years, next 8 years, and then the parent is now forcing the kid to use it, whereas they may not be having fun using it. I think
This
that's an
is
example
actually
of
a
not
fun
such a good
conversation
program.
because at one point we are talking about coding and all these big jargons that have erupted recently with all these
Yeah,
companies glorifying their offerings. And at the same time, we also
yeah,
have schools which are preparing kids for test prep like
yeah.
IIT, JEE, or AIPMT right from the age when they are in grade 2.
It's the exact same issue. I have a big problem with that because these aren't schools, they become education shops. They are making silos in the students' mind so early on. I mean, I know of enough schools from grade 7 or 8 where they don't even have their own teachers coming in. It's outsourced to this. That's it. They're running the whole thing. The point is, if our parents keep buying into these things, companies will keep trying to sell these. The schools will keep trying to sell these kind of coaching shops. Um, it serves no purpose. In fact, it does much more harm than any good to have a kid siloed in that early on.
At one point, we were talking about educating kids for IIT, JEE when they are in grade 2. And on the other hand, we are saying that IIT, JEE or such test prep examinations may even go obsolete in a few years.
Absolutely. It's such a bundle of contradictions. This whole concept of preparing for IIT JEE from such an early on age is a huge disrespect and disservice that those companies have done to the country. Because if you see the percentage of students who get accepted from these kind of schools where they are coaching from grade 8, the percentage of students is no more than the national average. They haven't achieved anything big in that, but it's just siloed. Now imagine if you're a kid for 4 years, you only prepare for that. It's like an Olympic, right? And then if you don't make it in, you face such a big setback psychologically. Your first step in real life is full of setbacks and embarrassments. My father was a professor at IIT Kanpur. He was the head of chemical engineering. I spent many years on the campus, and I would see what kind of joy people will have when they would enter. The entire objective was entering into the IIT. It was not about performing once you get in. You would enter, and then kids would end up dropping out after year one, year two. 16% of the kids would drop out by the time it's year two, 1 in 6, right? After getting in, after all that effort. So it's just that sort of challenge that students and parents take without thinking of the end outcome.
And how do you see career counseling in future? Will it be solving these kind of preconceived notions that the parents or the students comes up with?
I think it's totally driven by data and stories. Like when we talk to parents and we tell them that, let's say, sending your kid for this particular career or this particular course is going to mean 1 out of 3 kids that have gone into this career have actually dropped out in year one. When we tell parents that, based on data of last many years, parents take a deep breath, they get a setback. When we tell them that, oh, if you're going to force your kid to go to this particular college, this has 1 in 2 students dropping out. um, there are so many types of data, so many types of stories that come out. If you're actually tracking this, and career guidance becomes much more than opinion, becomes a result of stories and successes and failures, and they're being given back to the students to make decisions.
And how do you see we should be addressing these challenges when parents wants to send their kids to schools
Yeah.
which are actively promoting test prep coaching?
This, Himanshu, is over a period of time, the parents need to be told about the other career options which are as lucrative or better than, let's say, going into an IIT. That's number one. And number two is by showing them that every student who gets into IIT or goes into this career does not end up having a stellar future. So both the things, sort of de-glorifying some of these careers and colleges that have become legendary, and also making them aware about other options which have come up, which are equally good. It's a gradual process. It takes a few years. What we have seen is that when you look at parents who start with us in grade 9 or grade 10, by the time the kid is in grade 12, these parents are well aware, right? But how do you get them to start much earlier? It's a matter of bringing it out very clearly to them and educating them about these aspects. It is a gradual process because it's taken maybe 30, 40 years for parents to develop this kind of a mindset that, oh, IIT is everything, going to US is everything, stuff like that. If it's taken that much time to develop it, it will take maybe 25% of the time to get rid of it. At least 10, 12 years it will probably take. uh,
I think that the bug lies at the parent as they need to come out of their cocoon and understand other opportunities even before making their mind of enrolling their kids with these education shops.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I'm encouraged to say that parents are now opening up. They are now talking. We see that a lot of times in our schools, much more than what we saw maybe even 3, 4 years ago. They are making that effort. It's about continuing that practice and making it stronger.
And with this, it's time to say goodbye to you, Jaideep. It was pleasure having you on the show. And let us leave parent with these questions and let them answer
Right.
these questions for themselves and for their kids.
Great. Thank you so much, Himanshu. I think it was a really fun discussion, and I hope your parents and audience will be able to benefit from it.
I hope that you all have enjoyed listening to this fun and meaningful conversation with Jaideep Gupta. If you have liked this conversation, then do rate us on Apple Podcasts and share it in your network. And we will meet again in the next episode with another amazing guest. Thank you for listening to The Ed Show. You can now listen to the same podcast on Apple and Google Podcasts, or you can watch it live on YouTube. And I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, stay safe and stay happy.